Okay, I want to show you a technique to really easily add a lot of complexity to your renders. This is a method of just, adding a lot of detail really fast and honestly, very easily. So here's a render using this technique that I'm going to show you. This is one I finished a couple days ago, and in a second I'll show you the blend file. When you see the blend file, it's going to look crazy and it's going to look insane and just so complicated, but I promise I will break it down into a way that's like very simple and honestly like very easy to understand and look at, and like hopefully I'll kind of be able to break the illusion of what's going on here, and you'll be able to see how stupid simple this actually is. So yesterday I was working on this render right here, and I've used this technique before, but I really realized how powerful it was yesterday when I was kind of sitting there struggling, and then I just did this thing, which I'll explain in a second, and then all of a sudden everything just kind of came together quite easily. So what I'm talking about is, it's going to sound very simple, but I'll kind of show you how this works. Taking a bunch of models, combining them into one collection, and then just instancing that collection, duplicating it around a bunch more times to create something very complex. So that sounds simple, but well, it is simple, but let me just kind of show you what I mean, how this applies to this here. So here's the blend file, and this is what I mean. I know it looks like scary at first when you see this, but let me break this down into its very like its core pieces that are actually very, very simple when you break it down to the fundamental level. So let's look at what's going on here. If I click on this, you might notice this is one object, or it seems to be one object. This is actually a collection instance of a bunch of objects together. And if I click around here, you can see how I've put this together of just kind of a bunch of clusters of, they're actually all pretty much the same model. There's a couple variations. So, you'll see some of these towers have an extra piece on top. This, it's the same tower duplicated. It just has one extra model on the top of it. And I'll explain all this in a second, but that's what's going on here. It's just a bunch of these same towers duplicated around here. And, with the help of different angles and different rotations and lighting, and, the light's hitting some of these and making some spots brighter, and it's, kind of hidden in shadows in other spots. You can't tell that much that it's the same model duplicated a bunch of times, but it gives the illusion here that it's, all this complexity and all this variation, but it all fits together in a cohesive way. Well, it all fits together because it's all the same thing. So let's actually break this one piece down into its, individual pieces, and I'll break that down even further if you want, but yeah, basically all of these towers here are the same model, or the same cluster of models, with some filler things here and there, which I'll get to later. But let's break down this main tower. So this main thing in the middle is it's the same thing as all these other ones around here. So I'll just look at this one thing here, and let's break this down. So I know this, even just one of these looks complex to a lot of people. So I'll just go through this and kind of explain this in a more simple way. But let's look at this first of all. So this is the collection instance that I was talking about, where if I actually bring this back, so I'll just bring in, I have a tower collection, which is what all these are. Select that and isolate it. So here's all the individual models that make up that bigger collection of stuff. And if you've been watching my channel, you recognize a lot of these. A lot of these are just the, if you've seen the temple video, there's a lot of these pieces in here, kind of mixed in with some other ones. As soon as I bring this collection in, it's going to go like weird in the render view. That's just because it's overlapping with another model. Just ignore that. But yeah, it's there's not anything crazy. I will break these individual pieces down even further in a second. But for now, I just want you to understand this is like low effort. Like, this is me taking a bunch of models and slapping them together into the shape of roughly a tower, and just kind of putting things into, I don't know, like a shape vertically. Like, I didn't spend that long on this. This is pretty simple. It's just kind of taking models that I made a while ago, or that other people made, and stacking them on top of each other, literally, and then there you go. And then, so that's what's creating this main tower that I could duplicate all over the place. But let's break this down to an even simpler level. So if I go in here, I'll kind of just go through a bunch of these different models and show you where they came from and how they're kind of put together in a way that makes sense. So maybe I should do this. I'm going to duplicate this, move it to a new collection, because otherwise it'll mess up the existing one is instanced all over the entire scene, as you can see there. So we'll just call it test, whatever. And there we go. And we'll just isolate that. Okay. So now I can move this around and it won't destroy my entire scene. And let's get out of rendered view here. So let's just kind of pull these pieces apart, and maybe I can just kind of show you like how this is getting put together. So you will probably recognize, if you have the fantasy asset pack that I sell, a lot of these models. And same thing, if you have the free temple pack, you'll recognize a lot of these here. So like this piece, for example, in the middle, that's just that free temple thing I gave away in that other video. If you want to find that video, I'm not going to link it, but just search like Max Hay temple modeling, you'll find it. But there's some other ones that I haven't shown in videos before that I've just made recently. So like this, it has a mirror modifier. You know, I can take that off. Like a lot of these pieces here are just actually the same, like it's the same thing where it's like one piece duplicated again over itself to make it a bigger piece. So you can see these pillars are the same thing, just like stretched out in different ways and put together in kind of different orders. And then just like some slats or like slabs or whatever kind of just put in between them. But it's like the same pillar duplicated a bunch of times over itself. And then that creates an even bigger pillar. And then that pillar gets duplicated over itself a bunch more times. And that creates an even bigger pillar, or I guess a tower in this case. But yeah, like let's actually just explode this. Like if I hit effect only locations and then scale this up, we can see like this will just kind of break it apart and just move everything away from itself. Ignore this viewport over here, just focus on this one. But you can see here, it's all not very complex models. Like there's kind of, it's pretty jankily thrown together. Like if you've seen that temple modeling video, I made this one in that other video and I just slapped that right into the middle of this thing. And there you go, it's stacked on top of itself. And then there's other pieces from, this is a temple pack that I got from ArtStation. I can't remember where, but if you go on ArtStation and just search temple asset pack, you'll probably find it. It's not the highest quality, but it works for things that are far away in this case. So you can see here, like if I just isolate one of these pieces, this is like one model that I just put in a square like 4 times. So it would have been something like this. I think it might have been this exact one actually. And then, you know, just drop that in from the asset library. And for some reason it just made sense for me to just do this, you know, there you go. That's how that was made. Let's bring this collection back. So you can see it's just literally stacking different models that seem like they would go together on top of each other over and over again. And then eventually you end up with a bigger cluster of just models that seem like they fit together in a cohesive order. And when I say cohesive order, I mean like, I don't know, they all are vertical. Like I knew making this that I wanted it to be a tower. So that's what I did. I just took the pieces of things you might find in a tower and put them together into a vertical shape. And then I ended up with something that looked kind of cool. And so hopefully this shows you that it's not complicated when you break it down to its individual pieces. So for some of you still, this might seem like very complicated because you don't know how to get models or how to make models, or you don't know like how to get shaped like this. That is, you know, you can just buy asset packs, but I would recommend, I would say it's an extremely important skill to at least know basic modeling, because there's things like this in here that are very simple to make, takes a couple minutes, and I've used this in the last like 3 renders I've done. It saved me so much time, and it's just like a cool piece that I just made. So if you want to learn, I don't know, modeling, there's tons of videos that just teach you exactly how to do it. If you want to see how I do it, I don't know if my way is like the exact like proper way to do it, but if you want to see exactly how I model, I do have a video, the one I was talking about. Just search like Max Hay modeling temple, you'll find it. And that one comes with a free asset pack if you want to just download some of these. But yeah, like these shapes are like not that complicated. Like if I take this for example and I just break this down into its individual pieces, so if I just separate by loose parts in edit mode, let's look at what's going on here. It's, you know, if I take these, just kind of take the individual loose pieces that I put together, just bring it over here. I'm just going to delete this mirror because that's annoying. And if we just look at this, Sorry. Get rid of this on all of these. Yeah, delete please. Okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, look at these pieces that make up that other chunk I was showing you. This is like a cube stretched out vertically. There's some insets, some extrusions, a couple of bevels. You know, nothing crazy. It's like, this is basic modeling. And so, you know, look at these pieces. You know, cube with like some insets and bevels, cube flattened with a bevel. And when you put all of this stuff together, all of a sudden it becomes more complex when you add these different, you know, simple shapes together. So it's literally as simple as, like, I'll make something right now. Like if we take a cube, let's say I want to make something similar. Maybe let's just stretch this out vertically. Maybe let's do a couple of edge loops, and let's bevel those edge loops like this. And let's do a little bit more. And let's extrude them. So just E, and then I want to scale that extrusion in. So S, and then we'll just Shift Z. And I don't need to like tell you every single button that I'm clicking, because again, there's so many tutorials on like modeling, and like I don't want this to be a click exactly what buttons I'm clicking type tutorial. But the point is, like, make something simple. I will show you this one. This is Alt E for extrude faces along normals. That's kind of a hidden one, so you don't hear that one very often, but that will let you just do this. And then there you go. You can just do that again. Inset, Alt E, extrude faces along normals to bring that out. I guess you could just hit E and then scale it, same kind of thing. Maybe we want a bevel on here, so we'll just throw a bevel modifier, or sometimes I'll just bevel it right on the mesh. Maybe we can change this to, we can change the profile to custom. Try that, I don't know, make some squiggly line. Turn up the segments, there we go. Just got free detail, but from that bevel. And maybe I want like a piece on the top, so I'll just hit set the origin to geometry, put the cursor here. Let's add another cube, and I kind of want like some kind of interesting type chunk at the top. So we'll just bring that down. Same technique, like edge loops, maybe bevel the edge loops, extrude them in. Maybe let's bevel like these things. It seems like this could be a cool spot for like a really complex bevel. So I'll just take that, and for some reason it's not letting me select this bottom edge very nicely, but let's take these, whoops, boom, boom, boom. And let's Control B, bevel, something like that. Increase the segments, and then maybe do a custom bevel profile again. There we go, that's kind of cool. And then, I don't know, we could just duplicate that again up here, and then maybe have something else in the middle. Like, I don't know, we could just put something else, doesn't really matter. Maybe we could just inset all these faces, Alt E, extrude faces along normals, bevel, cool, whatever. And you can see how just creating basic shapes like this all of a sudden can lead to something a lot more interesting. So maybe let's convert that to mesh, join, origin to geometry, bring it down here, and cool, it doesn't have to be perfect for this demo. Mesh, convert to mesh to apply all modifiers at once. And let's just join that together, so now we have a big pillar. And what happens if I take this pillar and I make copies of it all over itself? So let's do, like, duplicate this over here. Let's duplicate it over here, cool. And let's take some cube or something, and like, let's do what I did in the last one, just take like a slab or something like this, and we could just take these and pull it over here, and boom, and you know, something like that. And then this can be beveled to match everything that we've done here. Ooh, that's kind of cool, sure. And then maybe we can take this and like duplicate it again, rotate 90 degrees, and then chuck that right there. And you can see how after a little while of just doing like simple shapes, all of a sudden you can get something pretty complex. And you can take these pieces and you can like manipulate them and change them, and like, say I want a shorter version of this, well, let's take that and like shrink it down this way, and maybe pull this down and like pull this down, and then boom, and then we can take these, and let's say I want like a roof on here, cool, and then I can put like one more in the middle and whatever, you know. And it really is like that simple of just taking the same pieces, moving them around, duplicating them, adding a bit of variation, throwing in a completely different model once in a while just to break up the pattern. And then before you know it, you know, you have a very, very complex shape, and it's this same technique of like making a thing that's simple, duplicating it over itself, you know, then you get something a bit more complex, but it's still like a simple shape that you're working with, like a simple chunk. And then we could even do that again, like we can just keep doing that over and over and over again. And before you know it, you have something that's super, super complex looking, but it's just like, you know, repeated shapes with like a bit of variation. So I know that was like kind of a long explanation of like one model, but I hope that shows you that like this stuff is pretty easy once you can just do some basic modeling, as long as you know how to just, you know, repeat things in a way that's still pleasing to look at. And that's really what it's about, is, you know, being able to repeat the same shape without just, without it looking like it's just duplicated 100 times. And I guess that just comes with practice. Yeah, this is actually kind of cool. I might save that for later. Let's just move this to save for later. But if we look around here, all of these pieces, except for the ones from that fantasy or that temple pack that I just bought, all the pieces that I made here are just simple shapes, like repeated and duplicated over themselves. And it's just insets and extrusions and bevels and just quite basic shapes put together in a way that looks like a temple piece. And then that, like, once you have a bigger piece, you take that, repeat it over itself, or put it together with other pieces in a way that seems like it would make sense. And then eventually it does make sense. And eventually you have something that's a crazy, massive structure. But, you know, when you look at, like, again, those individual pieces are not complex at all. Even the things like this, where it's like, wow, that looks, you know, some of you guys might see this and go like, how the hell am I supposed to make that? You know, just when you're trying to make something, look at references and look at like the basic individual building blocks that you could use that are simple shapes that make up that more complex shape that you're looking at. So for things like circles, just, you know, start with the most basic things, like add cubes, add circles, add, you know, slowly more detail, inset, extrude, repeat that, duplicate parts, and then before you know it, you'll have something that's much more complex than you thought you would have been able to make. Okay, so hopefully that makes more sense now, that, you know, this thing here is just a bunch of pieces slapped together that are all pretty simple on their own. So there you go. And I kind of just went like level by level. I might have started in the middle and then like duplicated some of it downwards, duplicated some upwards, brought in new models here and there, just whatever makes sense in the moment. I don't know, just it's, you know, it's pretty messy and janky when you look at it like this, but from, you know, I knew this was going to be far away, so from far away I made it look totally fine. Okay, once that was done, let's check out material preview. I took a basic texture from Quixel Megascans, just some 4K rock texture, and some textures that came with these other models from the pack that are from Ambient CG. And I just, like, for all these ones, this looks like trash in material preview. It looks like garbage, but in rendered view, it actually looks sick. So I think that just comes down to lighting and like how you present it, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, like this is not like crazy texturing. It's literally a 4K texture from Quixel, just put directly on the model and then cube project. Like that's it. And then like, maybe scale it around a bit in the UV editor. Like if we look here, there's the UV map. Like it's just a cube projection. Like if I just hit U and then C, it's like that. And that's on all these, and it looks good. You know, it doesn't look good here, but in the render, it looks good, and that's all you need sometimes. Depends what you're making, obviously, but most of the time, like 90% of the time, if not more, I just UV unwrap that way, and I just don't even worry about it because it looks good most of the time. So same thing for here. This is just like a texture from, I think it was textures.com or something, or Ambient CG, I'm not sure, but same thing, cube project, move it around until it looks good on the model, like on the UV editor, and then there you go. You just save, like anytime you make one of those pieces, save it for later, and then when you want to just make something really quick, you just go into your big pile of pieces you made, grab anything, throw it together with a bunch of other pieces, or make something new really quick, and then there you go. You can make really complex, intricate, crazy structures out of like, you know, chunks of models that you already have or made very easily. Yeah. I don't think I did anything to these textures. There's a little bit of nonsense going on up here. I don't even know what this is, but like, you know, this is not that different from the base color, I think. Like, if we look at this, yeah, maybe it's what is it? Ambient occlusion? Yeah. So it's like making the corners and edges a little bit like softer looking. Not a big deal. You can figure out a way to do that. It's just ambient occlusion into like getting multiplied into the color somehow, but it's like honestly barely making a difference. But yeah, like it's there's nothing that I've done here that's like complicated. Hopefully you can see that. Obviously, if you're very new to Blender and you've never seen this before, yeah, it's going to be complicated. But if you're someone who's just been using the software, like you'll understand everything I'm talking about here. It's nothing like there's nothing that advanced. It's like basic modeling, basic texture, and then combine those things together, and then yeah. Okay, so let's look at how I used this massive piece here to build the rest of the scene, because this still looks a bit crazy here, so let's talk about that. I already kind of showed you that, but let's just look at that even more. Basically what I did with you saw all those loose pieces that I was using earlier in that test collection. If I don't know where that went. This one? Yeah, if I select this. So you see how I'm just using all these loose individual different chunks of models. What I did to construct the rest of the scene from this point was, once I was happy with the tower and just having them all loose, I actually just moved them all to a collection. So the way you do that is you select, I won't do it in this, but I will add like a new thing here. Let's move this to a scene collection. So the way collections work, if you don't know, I'll just demo it really quick. If you have any object or any bunch of objects, so we'll just make something really quick. Say this is what I'm working on, and we have some variation here and there, and there's some different models and whatever. If I select all these, press M for move to collection, hit new collection, and we'll just call it demo collection, and I hit OK. Nothing's changed in my viewport, but what's happened is you can see in the outliner here, those different objects that I just added are now all in this collection. And what is nice about that is you can add that entire cluster of objects as a new object, sort of, or as a collection instance. What that means is this. If I hit Shift A and I go to here, collection instance, and what do they call it? Demo collection. And I just set, the origin is like way off here because it's like, I made it like way far away from the world origin, but I can actually just hit origin to geometry. This is my quick favorites when I press Q, but if you don't see that, just hit F3, search for origin to geometry. You'll find it. So yeah, origin to geometry. And then there you go, it'll just move that back to the center. So there we go. Now you can see how those, like, before it's moved to like when it's the actual objects, they're all like loose and separate, but then when you add it as a collection instance, it all kind of treats all those different pieces as one solid object. And so if I try and hit tab to go to edit mode, you can see it's not doing anything. It's just an instanced version of it. It's not the actual real thing. So what happens is anytime I move any one of those original objects in that collection, so remember this is the original objects, it'll move it around in the instanced collection as well. So that's really nice if you have a bunch of things that are rotated all differently. If I turn this off, and you have a bunch of them and there's stuff everywhere. When I move one of these pieces or I manipulate one of these shapes, it'll update that straight away in the collection instances. So it's annoying to work like this sometimes if you don't set it up right, because it means if you have one that you're working with and then you try and move something, it might like mess up everything, because if you want to just move it a bit to the left, it moves everything. So what I do is I just move it to a collection, disable the collection, like you uncheck it, and then you just work with these instances, and then anytime you want to edit it, you just bring that collection back, right click, press S to select all the objects in that collection, and then just isolate it with backslash to go to local view. That's the backslash next to the question mark, or sorry, the same key as the question mark, but next to the shift key, to isolate temporarily. And then there you go. You can just manipulate this however you want, change it, and then go back to your instances of that collection, wherever it was. Where did that go? Yeah, I'm messing up my scene, but whatever. So anyways, the point is, this is just what I showed you there. That demo is just this. So you can see, if I try to go to edit mode, I can't do it because this is a collection instance. It'll render it much faster, I think, if you have the same object instanced versus duplicated. So if I hit Shift D a bunch of times, it would be a lot laggier than if I put it to a collection instance and then added the instance of that collection. And I'm saying instance a lot, but if I add a collection instance of that, it'll be much faster than pressing Shift D or even Alt D, I think. So anyways, once I made that one tower out of those smaller pieces, I took that. Let's just find this here. I took that chunk, hit like Shift A, collection instance, tower, and there you go. You get one of those straight away. And so from there, it's as simple as taking that and spamming it around a bunch of times until it looks cool. So that's exactly what I did here. And you can see, like if I wanted a taller one, I would just take it and just duplicate it over itself even. Like this is, that's not like good. You can't always get away with that depending on what you're doing. But for just some render, yeah, it's totally fine to do that. It looks cool. So that's literally all I did. Like same model, duplicated 18 times with like some variation here and there. Like I showed you before, there's that main tower. And then if I want variation, chuck another one of those models straight on the top and just, it looks, kind of different. And so what's going on here is like, it's just that a bunch of times, and then to fill in the gaps and fill in, to break up the repetition and make it not so obvious that it's just repeating so many times. All you do is you just take some other models that fit in there, or even in this case, the same model, but just orient it differently to add bridges. And then there you go. Like I have this thing just sticking sideways, looks like some kind of walkway. Honestly, that's pretty lazy. I should have like done a different piece at least instead of the same exact model just rotated sideways, but whatever, looked fine. But yeah, like adding in separate objects that are not part of those collection instances to kind of bridge the gaps, literally in this case, or just fill in spaces that feel like they need something different. That's a really, really easy, efficient, and good looking way to do that, is you just take new models and just put them and kind of connect pieces differently, and it just makes everything feel less duplicated and more like it's like fitting into the same place and more like cohesive. I hope I'm explaining that right, but yeah. So that's kind of it. And then like same thing like here, this was not part of the collection instance. I just put a bigger one of these down here because it looked cool. Or, there's in the foreground especially, like this kind of looked bland and boring here. So to add detail to the foreground, I just put a model of some stairs and pots and a chest. And all of a sudden now there's like, up close here, there's all this detail in it. You can it kind of puts into your brain that level of detail is everywhere, even though it's not. So I hope that makes sense, where it's like, we're looking at this thing the thing that's like up close to the camera, it's all super dense, detailed. But then like, obviously there's not this level of detail, like stairs like this everywhere. It's just in the spots that need it to make, like, to give it the illusion that level of detail is everywhere. Because when it's that far away, you can't even tell what's going on. But it's like, if you have, something very minimal up close, it just kind of breaks the illusion. If you have a lot of detail in the foreground and then like medium detail in the background, or even little detail, you can kind of fake it, you can kind of have the illusion of tons of detail if it's far away enough that you can't really see what's happening, but in the foreground it looks like there's tons of just dense detail. That's what's going on here. I hope that was a clear explanation. If it's not, point is just, if the foreground looks bad, just add detail and make the immediate stuff that's close to the camera good, and it will just help everything else. Let's talk about the lighting, because this is where it gets a little, I don't want to say complicated, but like there's just a bit more happening. So the main lighting that you would need to worry about is this right here. Oh shit, I accidentally fucked up the spotlight. God damn it. And you can't undo that. Yeah, this. Try and put that back to where it was. So the main lighting is this stuff right here, these 4 spotlights. And I think there's probably even one spotlight that's the main one, which would be like 1 or 2. These ones, I think. Yeah. The rest are kind of not really doing much. So let's look at what's going on here. Part of the reason this works so well is because the lighting is not just super bright and lighting up everything all at once. So I intentionally hid a lot of this stuff in darkness, because it means that the less stuff you can see, the less stuff you have to worry about making look good or repeating or basically the less light there is, the less problems you're going to run into. Generally, I mean, that's not always true. Sometimes that can be a problem itself, just if, if everything's too dark. But just breaking up the pattern of what's being illuminated, that's a really easy way to just make things look better. If there's a lot of repeating shapes or things just don't look that good on their own, just having lighting that's interesting and like some parts are light and some parts are really dark, that's a method you can use that looks cool but also can hide some imperfections sometimes. So let's look at these lights here. I think that one of the last videos I did was just all about using spotlights like this. In those videos, I think I just used one spotlight in all the renders, but in this case, I did that, set it up with one, and then it looked better to just duplicate it a couple more times, so I ran with that. But it's like, the way this works is you set up one, make it look good, and then try duplicating it. If it looks better, keep it there. If it looks worse, then keep trying until it looks better. The key here is they're all pointing in the exact same direction, so it looks kind of like sunlight, because if you think about like the rays of sunlight, those would all be coming from the same source, the sun. So they're all moving, like all of those light rays would be moving parallel to each other, all in the exact same direction. So if you're gonna fake sunlight with spotlights like this, just make sure they're all pointing the same way. Unless for some rare reason it looks a lot better to have like one pointing down, but just be careful with that, because this is like not how light works. If you're, a lot of the times it helps a lot to think about the light source you're creating. Like think about what that would be in real life. So what I mean is, like in this case, what does this light in here look like it's coming from? To me, it kind of looks like it's coming from, looks like we're in a cave and there's some sunlight coming through. Like that's where it would be from. It doesn't really look like somebody's holding a flashlight, or it doesn't really look like some magical light. It looks like natural kind of sunlight. So when you have something that is starting to look like natural sunlight, you want to keep it looking like that, and you don't want to mess up what like that light source would be. And yeah, just if it is meant to be sunlight, just keep it looking like sunlight is the point. Okay, let's look at the settings on here. 2 million watts, it's bright. That's going to be different depending on what your render looks like. It's going to change every time. Color, white. Radius, 2 meters. Just a little bit softer than like this. There's not a huge difference in this case, but I find that just softening up the shadows by making the light source a bit bigger always looks pretty nice. And you can see the difference that makes there. If I increase this, it's going to be like much softer shadows. Yeah, and then this spot size right here, this is like the radius of the cone. That's just that's how we're getting this segmented, like broken up lighting effect, where some parts are really bright and some parts are really dark. You'll see that it's not like an area light like this. That does look kind of cool, but I wanted that effect of like different like beams of sunlight coming through like cracks in a cave or something. And so that's what this is. So it's not lighting up all of it all at once. It's we're actually being very selective about what's getting lit and what's not. So obviously I wanted the main tower here to be the brightest part, and that's exactly what I did here with the spotlight. Just lined it up so that was getting illuminated the most. If I hide these ones, you can see what that's doing. Yeah, so these are all placed kind of strategically. I just kind of moved them around until they looked good, and yeah, so they're just lighting up what I want you to see and kind of hiding what I don't want you to see. And then volumetrics are helping a lot with the sense of scale here. So if I'd hide this, yeah, that makes a big difference. Just in scenes like this, volumetrics are always gonna look good. Yeah, just basic settings, just default color, density at 0.02. Again, things like this are gonna change every single render you do, so don't copy the exact number, but just keep it like the rough range in mind, like 0.00 whatever, and anisotropy turned up pretty high at 0.8 whatever. Like sometimes it looks good to have it down, sometimes it looks good to have it like really cranked really high. In this case, I found this looked good, so there you go. And then again, that's just on a big cube over everything. Yeah. Let's talk about the rest of these lights, because well, do you want to talk about that? Yeah, it's fine. So the way this the way I set up the rest of these lights, like if I hide the main lighting, let's just hide this for a sec. There's still light in here from all these like torch type lights, kind of looks like. So that gives it a lot of like life and just makes everything feel a bit more alive. What that is, well, let's look at it. So let's go to that collection, that tower collection. Isolate this. So remember how I instanced this collection all over the place? What I actually did was I put lights inside that collection instance. So just regular point lights, and just kind of placed them around in little pockets that seemed like they'd be cool. And then in all of those other instances around the scene, those lights are now going to get put naturally, like they're automatically going to get placed into those collection instances, and they're automatically going to start lighting up places, like all the interior cracks and stuff. So all I did was no real strategy, just throw in a point light. Here's the settings, like the radius doesn't really matter, the power doesn't really matter. It's just like however bright it looks here, like I was aiming for that level of brightness, not necessarily a number on the power. And that's just, you know, I just placed it into like little chambers and little rooms and little just pieces of this model that had some empty space. And then that's kind of just creating this effect of like, it looks like there's illuminated rooms with like torches in them or something. And then there's a bunch of these all over here. If I kind of go to X-ray mode, it's kind of hard to see, but if I select, let's see if I can, yeah, here. So this is all the lights inside of this collection. So what's nice about this model is there was a lot of empty spaces naturally, because there's lots of like pillars and like hollow shapes. So it was really easy to just find places to put these lights in. Yeah, you could see like, just, again, no strategy, just like put them in places that seem like a room or a chamber, and then it illuminates light from there. And that's what I did. And again, once it's in that collection instance, it'll be updated in real time with those other collection instances. So I actually did that after I placed all these around, and then it got updated immediately to the other instances of that collection, which is very nice. And then that's what's creating this look of like natural torchlight, but also like sunlight coming in too, which is, you don't see that very often, I think, but kind of cool. I think that is everything. Yeah, okay. Somehow just covered everything. So, I don't know, like, the point of this video is like, even scenes that look extremely complex, and like, when you see this render at first, you might think, how the hell am I going to add that much detail to my scene? The point of this video is to show you that like, when you break things down to like smaller fundamental pieces, this isn't that crazy. It's not that hard. And you know, a lot of it just comes down to like using good lights, finding a good camera angle, and that, you know, you just got to practice those things, and you'll get better at presenting your renders. I guess here's the camera settings. Basic perspective, 24 millimeters. It's up here looking down this way. I just thought that looked good. So there you go. It's kind of like, anytime I'm using the camera in Blender, I like to imagine if I was walking around this place, where would I be standing to take this picture? So I kind of imagine this is like some massive well or like cavern or something that we would be entering from the top. So that's why I put the camera up here looking downwards. Like if you discovered this massive pit for the first time and you just looked over the edge and just took a picture, that's the feeling that I wanted to give for this render. So that's where I started with the camera, and then I just kind of, you know, moved it around, refined it. Just, you know, it's not that hard. You just rotate it around and move the position and see what looks better. Do a couple of test renders and see what you like about one and what you don't like about the other one, and then refine the camera angle from there. Yeah, depth of field is disabled. There's nothing close enough to the camera that it wouldn't even be blurred out anyways, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, like I said, if you just use some basic models, some basic textures, put them together in a way that looks cool, and then throw on some lights and volumetrics, you're good to go for like a lot of different environments. You know, depending on what you're making, obviously you're gonna have to like do more work depending on if it's for a client or whatever. But just for a general render, yeah, you can get away with stuff like this pretty easily. Okay, anything else? I'll quickly plug the course if you want to go really in depth into creating environments and watch me create environments like from 0% start, get an idea, and then go through all the way through to 100% finished. I have a course where I show you that entire process 3 different times and just make 3 renders from start to finish. So if you want to get like really in-depth information on how I put my scenes together, that's a great place to do it. And yeah, it comes with a bunch of models as well. So a bunch of the models I used in this one to make this render are in there included. So if you want to check that out, there's a link in the description of this video. You can go and check that out if you want. If you don't want to spend money, it's probably not for you. But yeah, hopefully this was useful. And I don't know, if there's any specific videos you want to see or there's a specific render you want to see a breakdown of, you can let me know in the comments or on Instagram or whatever. So I don't think I need to say anything else. So yeah, hopefully that was useful, and I will see you in some other video. Bye.